Not everything that makes sense works, and not everything that works makes sense. Pretty thought-provoking, huh?
Definitely makes you think.
Welcome back to By the Pages. Today we're going to be unearthing some fascinating insights from Alchemy, the surprising power of ideas that don't make sense,
Oh, cool.
by Rory Sutherland. He's like a keen observer of human behavior, and he argues that logic isn't always the best tool, especially when you're dealing with people, right? People can be unpredictable.
Very much so.
So get ready to challenge some of your assumptions and embrace the power of some ideas that don't make sense. Rory, he brilliantly highlights the limitations of logic. He says relying solely on traditional market research and economic theory often lead to these flawed solutions.
Right, because people don't always act in predictable or rational ways.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Rory actually uses the term psychologic to describe this way of thinking that considers the hidden motivations and irrationalities that drive us.
Yeah, and I think it's really cool how he actually hyphenates the word psychologic to emphasize the distinction between those two types of logic.
I like that.
That they are very different concepts and they require different approaches.
Yeah, it is fascinating how we kind of elevate logic
Yes.
as the ultimate solution.
Exactly.
And yet our decisions are rarely based on,
pure rationality.
purely on rational thought.
Yeah.
He actually uses this compelling analogy of regulation issue binoculars to illustrate. Imagine you're looking through these binoculars.
Okay.
And one lens is market research, right? So it's asking people what they want.
Okay.
And then the other lens is economic theory, which assumes that we are rational beings seeking to maximize utility.
Right.
But the problem is both lenses are cracked.
Well.
Right? People don't always know why they do what they do.
Yeah.
And then their stated preferences often don't align with their actual behavior.
Right. Yeah. You're absolutely right. He gives a really great example of this with a utility company that was struggling with customer complaints about long appointment windows for engineers.
Oh, yeah.
So the logical solution seemed to be okay, we've got to shorten those windows.
Make them smaller.
Right. Make them shorter. But Rory's team, what they discovered was that the real issue wasn't the length of the window. It was the uncertainty of not knowing when the engineer would arrive.
Oh.
So the solution wasn't about being more efficient or logical. The solution was sending a simple text message 30 minutes before the engineer was due to arrive, giving the customers control certainty.
Yeah.
And that seemingly minor change addressed the underlying psychological need.
Yes.
It proved far more effective than simply shortening the appointment window.
I love that example. So much of it is about the psychology of the actual situation. So this concept of psychologic kind of challenges the very foundation of how we conventionally think about problem solving, right? It suggests that the solutions often lie in understanding the underlying motivations and the psychology of the people we're trying to reach.
Yeah, it's about addressing the why behind the what.
Yes. And I think this is something that we often overlook when we get caught up in the logic of it all.
Absolutely. Rory goes on to discuss how this over-reliance on logic can really blind us to solutions that come from these unexpected places. He actually recounts the story of John Harrison, who was an 18th century clockmaker who solved this problem of determining longitude at sea.
Interesting.
Which was a challenge that had baffled the greatest scientific minds of the time.
Yeah. And so what did he do? What was his approach?
So at the time, scientists were fixated on astronomy as the solution.
Right.
Harrison took a completely different approach and invented what's called the marine chronometer. It was a clock so precise that it could keep accurate time even on a rocking ship.
Wow.
And this invention, it worked brilliantly, but it was initially met with a lot of resistance because it didn't fit with the prevailing scientific paradigm.
It's remarkable how often groundbreaking solutions are initially dismissed because they challenge the established norms and threaten this existing expertise that's out there.
It's about power dynamics sometimes too.
Absolutely.
And this resistance to unconventional ideas, it really highlights the importance of remaining open to solutions that originate outside our traditional fields of expertise.
Yeah, don't be afraid to think outside the box.
Yeah.
And Rory actually brings this point into the modern context with this example of e-cigarettes.
Oh, yeah.
He observed that public health officials were initially very skeptical, even hostile towards e-cigarettes as a harm reduction tool for smokers, despite their effectiveness in helping people to quit. He suggests that this resistance stemmed from this fear that the simplicity of vaping as a solution somehow undermined years of anti-smoking campaigns.
Right.
So it's almost like,
Pride.
yeah, a pride thing.
Ego.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This example highlights how even the most intelligent minds can fall prey to confirmation bias.
Yeah.
Right? Clinging to these existing beliefs even when they're presented with evidence to the contrary.
Yeah, we see that all the time.
All the time.
Yeah.
And Rory emphasizes this point throughout the book. He's like, we have to remain open to ideas that challenge our preconceptions, because sometimes the most effective solutions are the ones that seem the least logical on the surface.
Yes, I love that. So true.
So if logic isn't always the answer,
Right.
how does Rory suggest we approach problem solving?
Well, he introduces this concept called costly signaling,
Okay.
which completely flips the script on how we perceive value.
Oh, this is interesting. Tell me more about this.
Okay, so costly signaling suggests that actions that are perceived as wasteful or extravagant can actually serve as powerful signals of quality,
Okay.
trust, and commitment. It's about understanding that sometimes the most effective actions are those that appear illogical from a purely rational perspective.
Okay, so it's not about being illogical, but understanding the deeper psychological impact of our actions.
Precisely.
Yeah.
For example, think about those rope-handled carrier bags you get from high-end retailers.
Yeah.
They're not particularly practical,
No.
but they send a very clear message about the brand and the experience.
They do.
They signal that the brand doesn't cut corners. They value quality attention to detail.
All about the perception.
It is. It's about creating that perception of value that goes beyond the functional aspects of the product or service.
And this applies to so many things. Like you see luxury brands spending millions of dollars on elaborate advertising campaigns.
Yes.
Or like a restaurant offering a complimentary glass of limoncello after a meal.
It's not even about the cost of the limoncello at that point.
No, it's not about that.
It's about the gesture.
The gesture.
The signal of generosity and hospitality that just enhances the entire dining experience.
And what I find so fascinating about this concept is that Rory argues that these costly signals often trump logical arguments.
Yes, because they tap into our subconscious biases.
Wow.
We are hardwired to respond to these signals because they've evolved as reliable indicators of trustworthiness and quality.
Like almost like in the animal kingdom.
Exactly.
Like the peacock's tail.
Yes, it's impractical and even dangerous, but it signals to females that male is strong and healthy enough to survive despite the burden.
And branding is so crucial.
Yes.
Because it's like you're not just buying a product.
Yeah.
You're buying into a brand, a promise, a set of values.
Exactly. Rory suggests that this principle applies even to creativity itself.
Okay, how so?
Well, he argues that creative acts, whether it's writing a song or designing a building or even like preparing a delicious meal, can be seen as a form of costly signaling. These acts demonstrate skill and effort and a willingness to go beyond the purely functional, which often commands a premium price.
So the value of creativity lies not just in the final product, but in the signal it sends about the creator's talent,
Yes.
dedication, and unique perspective.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is something that is often overlooked in our data-driven world where we tend to focus on metrics and efficiency,
Yeah.
but we forget the power of those intangible signals
Right.
that create meaning and connection.
And actually, he illustrates this point really well with this example of this publisher who boosted their sales conversion rate by adding this simple phrase, "Thank you for your order," to their call center script.
Yeah.
So simple.
But incredibly effective.
Yeah.
It created a sense of personal connection and appreciation that resonated deeply with customers. It highlights how seemingly minor illogical tweaks can create a disproportionate impact.
Totally.
And this brings us to another core concept from the book, the power of reframing problems.
Okay, so let's unpack this idea of reframing. How does it tie into the overall concept of psychologic?
Well, Rory argues that we often get stuck in conventional ways of thinking,
Mhm.
which limits our ability to find innovative solutions. By changing our perspective, we can unlock a whole new world of possibilities.
Yeah.
He shares the story of a software company that was losing millions of dollars because of customer churn.
Oh.
They tried all the logical solutions, improving their offerings, lowering prices, bolstering customer support,
Right.
but nothing seemed to work.
So what did they do?
So Rory's team, they asked a simple yet powerful question. Why are customers calling in the first place?
Interesting.
And they discovered that many calls were actually for minor issues that could be easily resolved with better online documentation.
Oh.
So by focusing on improving their website and empowering customers to find answers independently, they dramatically reduced their churn rates.
Wow, so they solved a multi-million-dollar problem, not by fixing their product, but by reframing how customers interacted with it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of that story of the Patagonian toothfish,
Yes.
which is a fish that nobody wanted to buy because of its unappealing name. When they rebranded it as Chilean sea bass, sales just skyrocketed.
Exactly. Same fish, different perception.
Yes.
Completely different outcome.
These examples really demonstrate how a simple shift in perspective can completely transform a situation.
Rory encourages us to challenge our assumptions, look for those unconventional solutions, and recognize the power of psychologic.
So the takeaway here is that the most effective solutions may not always be the most obvious or the most logical ones.
Precisely. Rory then delves into this fascinating world of psychophysics, which studies how our senses influence our perceptions and judgments.
Interesting.
And this is really crucial for anyone who's involved in design marketing or any field where influencing human behavior is key.
What are some of the interesting insights that Rory shares from the world of psychophysics?
Well, consider how our televisions and computer screens essentially cheat us with color. They're designed to create this illusion of a wider range of colors than is physically possible by exploiting how our eyes perceive light.
So we're being tricked, but it's actually for our benefit.
Exactly. It enhances our viewing experience.
Okay.
Rory also discusses how words can change the taste of food.
Oh, wow.
He tells the story of a biscuit company that reformulated their most popular biscuit to be lower in fat.
Okay.
And despite blind taste tests showing no discernible difference, sales plummeted after they announced the change.
Oh, wow. So the perception that the biscuit was less satisfying because it was lower in fat actually became the reality for consumers.
You got it. Our perceptions shape our reality.
Wow.
And seemingly minor changes in language or presentation can have a significant impact on our behavior.
These examples are so insightful. Rory really highlights how much we take for granted when it comes to understanding human behavior. We were just talking about how our perceptions can shape our reality. How do we actually leverage this understanding to solve problems more effectively?
Well, Rory encourages us to kind of embrace this power of reframing.
Okay.
He says by looking at problems from different angles, we can often uncover solutions that wouldn't be apparent through a purely logical lens.
So instead of getting stuck in that conventional thinking, we should actively seek those alternative perspectives.
Exactly. It's challenging our assumptions, exploring those unconventional approaches. Rory gives a compelling example of how this actually works in practice. He was tasked with helping a train company reduce fare dodging on its network.
Okay.
Now, the traditional approach to this problem would have been to increase ticket inspector presence or implement stricter penalties.
Right. Those seem logical.
Yeah.
What did Rory do?
Rory decided to reframe the problem.
Okay.
Instead of focusing on catching fare dodgers, he suggested that the company focus on making it easier for people to actually buy tickets.
Oh.
So they streamlined the ticket purchasing process, introduced more ticket machines, and even made it possible to purchase tickets on board without incurring a penalty.
So instead of punishing people for not buying tickets, they made it easier and more convenient to do the right thing.
Exactly. And guess what? Fare dodging decreased significantly. By addressing the root cause of the problem,
Right.
the inconvenience of buying tickets, they actually achieved a far better outcome than they would have through traditional enforcement methods.
I love that example. It's
Yeah.
brilliant. It's like you said, it's about understanding the underlying motivations and behaviors that are actually driving a particular problem.
Absolutely. Rory provides another insightful example of reframing in the context of environmentalism.
Okay.
He kind of challenges this notion that simply providing information about the environmental benefits of a product is enough to change consumer behavior. He suggests we need to appeal to people's emotions and desires.
Right. So not just telling them what's good for the planet, but making them feel good about doing it.
Exactly. Rory suggests that making eco-friendly products more desirable might involve counterintuitive tactics,
Yeah.
like making them seem more luxurious or appealing to status and aspiration.
Oh, wow.
It's about understanding that people are motivated by factors beyond pure logic and reason.
It's fascinating how understanding psychologic can lead to more effective and innovative solutions across so many different fields. Rory really encourages us to think differently,
It does.
challenge those assumptions.
Yeah, he emphasizes the importance of experimentation and embracing a playful approach to problem solving.
Right.
He argues that sometimes the best ideas come from unexpected places, and we shouldn't be afraid to try things that might seem illogical at first glance.
Have the courage to step outside those comfort zones.
Absolutely. Rory provides a great anecdote about how a simple change in wording led to a significant increase in organ donation rates.
Interesting.
Traditionally, people had to opt in to become organ donors.
Hmm.
However, when some countries switched to an opt-out system,
Okay.
where individuals were automatically considered donors unless they specifically chose to opt out, donation rates skyrocketed.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, such a simple change can have such a profound impact.
Exactly. It suggests that we often underestimate the power of these subtle psychological nudges.
Yeah.
And Rory's Alchemy encourages us to kind of embrace this power and leverage it to create positive change in the world.
It's a compelling call to action for sure, reminding us that we can achieve these extraordinary outcomes by thinking differently and embracing that power of ideas that don't make sense.
It's about recognizing that the world doesn't always operate according to the rules of logic.
Right.
And that sometimes the most effective solutions are the ones that embrace the irrational, the emotional, and the unconventional.
As we're wrapping up our deep dive into alchemy, what are some of the key takeaways that you think our listeners can apply to their own lives?
One of the most important takeaways, I would say, is that we shouldn't be afraid to question our assumptions and challenge that conventional wisdom. The world is full of opportunities for those who are willing to think differently and embrace this power of psychologic.
It's about recognizing that logic is a valuable tool,
Yeah,
but not the only one. Sometimes the most effective solutions lie in understanding the emotional and the psychological factors that drive human behavior.
absolutely. Another key takeaway, I think, is that small changes can have a really big impact. Whether it's a subtle change in wording, a reframing of a problem, or a seemingly irrational gesture, these seemingly minor adjustments can often lead to profound shifts in outcomes.
It's paying attention to those details and recognizing that sometimes the most effective solutions are the ones that address those underlying emotional needs and motivations of the people we are trying to reach.
Rory's Alchemy encourages us to embrace the power of these subtle but really powerful influences and use them to create a more human-centered approach to problem-solving, innovation, and design.
It's about understanding that people aren't always rational,
Right.
and that our decisions are often driven by this complex interplay of emotions, biases, and social influences.
Rory's work really reminds us to stay curious, embrace experimentation, and never underestimate the power of ideas that don't make sense.
What final gems of wisdom does he leave us with as we wrap up?
Well, Rory encourages us to kind of view the world through this lens of curiosity and playfulness.
Okay.
He says we should approach problems with a sense of experimentation, not being afraid to try unconventional approaches or challenge those established norms.
So embrace that mindset of exploration and discovery,
Yeah,
being open to the unexpected, not confined by that traditional logic.
precisely. He emphasizes the importance of asking stupid questions.
Yeah.
Those seemingly obvious or naive inquiries that often lead to those breakthroughs.
Yeah.
He believes that these questions can challenge our assumptions and uncover hidden truths that we might otherwise overlook.
So approaching those problems with a beginner's mind, free from those constraints of preconceived notions and biases.
Exactly. Rory also highlights the importance of context in shaping our perceptions and decisions.
Okay.
He argues that we need to consider that broader environment in which our choices are made, recognizing that what might seem illogical in one context could be perfectly sensible in another.
There's no one-size-fits-all approach to problem solving.
Right. We need to adapt our thinking based on the specific circumstances.
Rory offers a fascinating example of how context can influence our perceptions of value. He talks about how the price of a product
Oh, yeah.
can significantly impact its perceived quality. A higher price tag can often signal exclusivity, desirability, and even effectiveness. But that seems so counterintuitive. Why would we value something more just because it costs more?
Well, it ties back into that concept of costly signaling.
Right.
We're hardwired to associate higher prices with higher quality, especially in situations where we lack other reliable information to guide our decisions.
So again, not always about logic or rationality.
Right.
Those perceptions of value are often shaped by those emotional and psychological factors that operate below our conscious awareness.
Exactly. And Rory emphasizes that this understanding is critical in fields like marketing and advertising,
Right.
where shaping perceptions is paramount.
So as we wrap up our exploration of alchemy, What's the key message you think Rory wants us to take away from all of this?
I think Rory's central message is that we should embrace this power of psychologic. We need to move beyond those limitations of pure rationality and recognize that human behavior is complex,
Yeah.
often irrational, and driven by all these emotional and psychological factors.
It's understanding that the world doesn't always operate according to those rules of logic, and that sometimes the most effective solutions are those that embrace the unconventional, the emotional, and the seemingly illogical.
Rory's Alchemy is a call to action. It encourages us to challenge our assumptions, explore new perspectives, and embrace the power of ideas that don't make sense.
Yeah. It reminds us that those most brilliant solutions often lie in those unexpected places, waiting to be discovered by those who dare to look beyond the obvious.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Alchemy by Rory Sutherland. We hope that this exploration has sparked your curiosity and inspired you to challenge your own assumptions. Remember to like and subscribe to By the Pages for more fascinating journeys into the world of ideas. You can find a link to Alchemy in the show description. What seemingly irrational behavior have you observed that might actually have a hidden logical purpose? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop learning.